I have a lot of confidence in Bill Barr to be fair to everybody, including the subject of the investigation. John Durham is a pro, but why is this so important? We can't live in a country where the rule of law only applies to Democrats, not Republicans. If you had two FBI agent, DOJ lawyer, wanted Trump to win, Clinton to lose, all this stuff would be front page news. So what have we learned? That when it comes to the American media, they don't care how you get Trump as long as you get Trump.
That's Senator Lindsey Graham slamming Democrats in the mainstream media last night on Hannity. As sources tell Fox News, U.S. Attorney John Durham's investigation into the origins of the Russia probe has now become a full-fledged criminal investigation. Joining us now, Robert Ray, former Whitewater independent counsel and former federal prosecutor. When you start talking about a criminal investigation of something that began in some of the most, secretive and perhaps revered institutions of the U.S. government, that's pretty frightening.
What it means is subpoena power and a grand jury to investigate whether or not a crime or crimes have been committed. And if a grand jury and a prosecutor determine that they have, criminal charges will be brought. So, but you had Kellyanne Conway on before. I don't think Americans really truly should be concerned about an investigation. You have investigations to determine whether or not there has been criminal misconduct. That's why you have professionals conduct those investigations with the required degree of independence from the political process in order to make judgments that are not based on politics but are based on the merits. And, John Durham enjoys a bipartisan reputation up to now. But I hope what we don't see is what I'm anticipating we will see. There are already calls for the Attorney General to recuse himself. Okay, well, that's ridiculous. He set up a certain measure of independence built into the system by having a currently serving U.S. attorney conduct the investigation with, a fair degree of latitude to decide appropriately whether or not there's a criminal case. And then finally, Americans understand in our system of government that the ultimate check on the power of a prosecutor are juries, meaning members of the community. So if charges are brought and there's something inappropriate about those charges, ultimately it will be for a jury to decide that there's no criminal cases warranted.
John Durham and Bill Barr went to Italy together and in a very highly secure conference room interviewed some top members of the Italian investigative process. And when they came back from that, they said that that's where they got some significant information. What does that tell you?
Well, that may be, but of course, the other significant thing that's happened is that Michael Horowitz has reached the end of his review inside the Department of Justice. I imagine that what's going to flow from that may well be recommendations for further proceedings within the Department of Justice, who have the authority to bring criminal charges. He does not, but obviously now John Durham does. And so that's where you will look to see what, if anything, may come of this by way of determining that it is appropriate to bring charges against one or more individuals.
So Durham wants to, we're told, talk to James Clapper and John Brennan, the two top...
within the intelligence community, yes.
Within the intelligence community in the Obama administration.
And then the third is going to be probably Jim Comey as well, because that's sort of the other place where intelligence information flowed, and then ultimately on, I think, into the upper reaches of the Justice Department. Not clear who knew what, when, where, and how, but again, the purpose of the investigation is to determine that. If he finds, that is John Durham, finds that it's appropriate to submit a case to a grand jury, I expect that that's what you'll see. But I will also say, if he, after a full and fair investigation, he has shown himself in the past, if there's not a case there, he will not hesitate not to bring it. Very quickly, do they have any grounds to say no? He has subpoena power, right? He does. So they can't say, no, sorry, I'm busy. No. Well, I mean, if they are issued a grand jury subpoena, they'll have to appear. They do have the right, like any American, to decide under those circumstances that they may invoke the Fifth Amendment privilege, which will be a significant event. And, of course, that's what you have investigations to determine. And there may be situations in which, in order to get further information, Mr. Durham may confer immunity in order to get truthful testimony. Fascinating times. Robert Ray, it's good to have you on. Thanks for having me. You bet.